puzzling the pieces. Sometimes we need to put the pieces together in different ways to, bottom line, make it work. Ginny Knight's another inspiring example of these women who started farms for the first time last year. So she, similar again to other stories I mentioned, rented land. In this case, she's not far outside of Madison, Wisconsin, in Sun Prairie. She started a CSA with friends and family as members, and also holds down several other part-time jobs, in this case working with, in some cases, other nonprofits, like-minded nonprofits in the Madison area. So she does smaller contract jobs or part-time jobs, again, until she can get the income to the level that she would need for the farm to do that full-time, and puzzling the pieces together differently. But in the meantime, she's doing it as she can. And lastly, activating for women farmers. Jamie Collins is a great example of that out in California, of advocating for these issues federally and nationally, and speaking up about each of our own individual experiences and how those affect policy. Jamie's been a great supporter and champion of a new farm bill program called the Beginning Farmer Rancher Development Program, BFRDP, which actually gives grants to organizations like Moses actually got a BFRDP grant to do training and different kind of programs to help support new farmers. But she actually came down to DC and gave testimony at the USDA when that program was just starting on what it should prioritize and how those funds should be used. Jamie's had a lot of issues in California where land prices are high on land access, and she currently strings together several different parcels she rents for her operation, and there's different programs and different lending programs that could help her potentially that we need to get funded, and she's very willing to share her story and her time for those issues. So end with some resources. As you look at the resource list I mentioned online, some approaches on how to look at that list. Go for the low-hanging fruit. Tip 1. Some things are real easy. You can get a listing on Local Harvest or Local Dirt right away, and something you could do right now, whereas ask for support and scholarships. We've mentioned that before with some of these programs and conferences that have a price tag, is always ask if there's scholarships available, ask for what you need, and see if there's ways to get the price tag down. Paula Vestine is a local farming friend of mine who came to a women's farming conference that was organized through our state's farm center last year, and she knew there were scholarships available, and she asked for one, and she got one, no problem, great. But at the time, she had I think her baby was 9 months old at the time, and too young to leave home, and she was taking the baby with, but the baby was the 6th of 6 kids, and she knew she would get a lot more out of the conference if she had a hand with the baby. So she calls the organizers back, and she says, I'd really love to go. I've got to bring my baby with, but can I also bring my son, my 16-year-old son with, to give me a hand? And the conference organizers said, sure. So if you could picture this at the end of the conference, here's this group of 100 women farmers who gave like a standing ovation to her son because he was just so great and so supportive of his mom throughout the conference, and all these women saw it and supported it. But the reason he was there, the reason his mom was there and got so much out of the conference, was the fact that Paula, asked these questions and called back and asked for what you need. And it's always great to hear how these stories end, because in most cases there are a lot of ways people can help each other and resources available. We just need to ask. Plan seasonally. This is what our farm looks like in January, where we're not out in the gardens, we're not on overload of tomato harvests, etc. So it's a real good time to look at some of these grants, particularly some of those ones like the Farmer Rancher grant. And importantly, so Plan B. See Liam there with asparagus in his pocket. He always has something in his pocket to eat, because you never know. Sharing the abundance, always an important theme. We do that through food on our farm. We host a lot of potlucks, particularly in the summer when we can move things outdoors, and like to connect people any way we can. So if there's opportunities we see, or opportunities that you see, we're trying to grow more of that here on this Rural Women's Project section of the Moses website. So feel free to always contact me if there's something you see that might be of help to other people, and together we can really grow this movement along. So one particular thing I want to mention specifically, because we haven't yet, and this is on the resource listing, is, as I mentioned briefly, women qualify as socially disadvantaged farmers because of our minority status for some Farm Bill programs, one of which is the Down Payment Farm Ownership Loan Program and the Direct Farm Ownership Operating Loans Program. So basically, if you're looking to buy a farm or you need a loan for equipment, etc., farm operating loans, there's specific funding set aside for the socially disadvantaged farming group. So it's something to think about, and in some cases you may need to educate other people you're talking to about this, because there's so many of these programs within the USDA. If you go on the resource list, there'll be a link to the information on the USDA page, which is sometimes helpful to print out and bring to your farm service agency locally when talking about these things and getting more information. A great organization that helps promote these sustainable agriculture priorities from a policy perspective is the National Sustainable Agriculture Coalition, NSAC, out in DC, that represents over 80 grassroots groups like Moses. Represents us in DC and fights for funding for some of these programs like SARE and other sustainable agriculture initiatives. A specific project NSAC does that I help out with is called Farm and Agriculture Resources for Media. This is a free toolkit for farmers that's online on the NSAC site that provides media training. Part of the story here is we need to tell our stories more, and we as farmers need to share our stories with the media, which both helps promote our business, but more importantly, helps promote the movement and helps promote awareness of these issues. So check that out. There's a free media training webinar, kind of similar to this one. There's also different toolkits and interview tip sheets and press releases you can download. And there's also something called the Farmer Database, where we're trying to collect farmers who are willing to share their story and respond to the media as asked. So there's an easy online sign up there too, and I would encourage and ask you, particularly beginning farmers, and particularly if you've participated in some of these funding programs, to sign up so we could connect with you as needs come up. The White House Project is a nonprofit organization that does bipartisan leadership training for women, with this idea that we need more women in elected office, and ideally one day the White House. And Moses and the White House Project partner particularly to encourage rural women and women involved in agriculture to take on a stronger leadership role and, again, potentially run for office. So I want to share their resource with you as well. And the picture in the slide right now of the White House lawn, anybody have a feel for who that might be? And it's not Obama's garden. He's doing a great job with that, but he doesn't have sheep yet. This is actually Roosevelt, under Eleanor Roosevelt, who had sheep on her front lawn and probably no landscaping costs.